Now I continue on in 1 John 5 and verse number 16. If any man see his brother sin a sin which is not unto death, he shall ask, and he shall give him life for them that sin not unto death. There is a sin unto death. I do not say that he shall pray for it. All unrighteousness is sin, and there is a sin not unto death. I've been dealing with the matter of sin on the Bright Spot Hour in recent days, and I appreciate those of you that have been following right along with us in the Bible. Today, I want to begin observing the fact of sin. The fact of sin. I've been trying to define what sin is in the context here, in the verse, if any man see his brother sin a sin which is not unto death. And then I find that there is a sin unto death. So obviously there must be some distinction or some degrees in the matter of sin. A sin not unto death is obviously not a sin unto death, and vice versa. I've been trying to define what sin is, and now I want to deal with the fact of it. You would not have to go very far in your town to find somebody that would deny the fact of sin. If you were to ask them, do you believe there's such a thing as sin? Do you believe that sin is in the world? Do you believe that men are sinners? They might laugh at you and mock at you and say, no, I don't believe there's any such thing as sin. A man that doesn't believe the Bible might come to that conclusion, or might have that idea if he's not a Bible believer. But then he would talk about crime, he would talk about problems in society, he would try to think up some social program that we need to help these people with their problems. And the greatest problem that I observe, and I've run for public office now twice, and I'm politically involved in Greenville, South Carolina, we don't need another government program. We don't need for the county or the state to create another agency to deal with drug abuse, homelessness, alcoholism, spousal abuse. The problem is sin. S-I-N. And if we create another program to deal with drunkenness, or we create another program to deal with drug abuse, or we create another program to deal with homelessness, we are only addressing a symptom to the problem. We're not addressing the problem. And it's kind of like taking an antihistamine when you get a cold. You take an antihistamine and it dries you up, and that is addressing the symptom. The symptom of having the cold is the congestion, the runny nose, watery eyes, and sinus headaches, and pressure in your sinuses and such as that. But that's a symptom. The problem is not the runny nose. The problem is the virus you have that caused you to have a runny nose or a sore throat, or as it were. So we create all these programs, and all we're doing is addressing the runny nose. We're not addressing the virus. So you can ask men about the matter of sin, and some will say, but there is no sin, I don't believe in sin. But those same people will be pushing for a tax increase to create homeless shelters and other government programs and government agencies to deal with the homeless and drunkards and drug abusers and things of that nature. The Bible is very clear. There is the fact of sin. Sin is a Bible fact. In Romans 3:23, the Bible records, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Now, to deny Romans 3:23, you might as well deny Genesis 1:1 and deny John 3:16. If Romans 3:23 is not true, then John 3:16 is not true. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, sin was in the world, there's no doubt about that. But now sin is in the human family. In Romans 5 and verse number 12, wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. Somewhere before God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, Lucifer was cast out of heaven. You can read the account of that in Isaiah 14. When Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, the adversary of the devil was already there. Sin was in the world, there's no doubt about that. But sin at that point was not in the human family. Sin was not in man. Sin was in the world, sin was in the Garden of Eden. Lucifer was there in the Garden of Eden and talked Eve out of her faith. And there Eve gave up faith for reason. But sin entered in the human family when Adam ate the forbidden fruit. And immediately death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. Now there can be no doubt. All men are sinners. Rich men, poor men, educated men, illiterate men, old men, young men, it doesn't matter. All mankind, men, women, and children, are all condemned under sin. And if you have any question about that, then you must deal with Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And there's not a person listening to my voice now, if you would be entirely honest with yourself and honest with the Bible, you know positively and absolutely that you have come short of the glory of God. You have failed and come short in that matter of God's glory, or in the matter of God's perfection. Then secondly, I'd point out there is a fact of observation. Sin is everywhere. Now, again, there are men that would deny the matter of sin, but then they would immediately begin trying to address societal problems and societal difficulties that are the direct result of sin. Sin is everywhere. And if any man has eyes to see, he sees the matter of sin everywhere he goes. You see, the eye must be blinded before it can become oblivious to the matter of sin. You and I look around in society, we see the blighting nature of sin. We see the blasting nature of sin. We see the brutalizing nature of sin. We see the animal working, the bestial workings of sin in the world of human life. I wonder how in the world can some humans treat one another like they do? How in the world do men treat other men, and women treat other women the way they do? When you turn on the news tonight at 6 o'clock, you know the saying in the news media is, if it bleeds, it leads. And you sit down and watch the news for the first 5 or 6 minutes, and you'll be entirely depressed, because all they talk about on the news is murder and mayhem. People going to jail, crooks and con artists, liars and cheaters, thieves and frauds, crooks and con artists. A single issue of the daily newspaper, a blog on the internet, sitting down and watching the news on the television tonight. You can go and visit the public institutions in any great city in the land, and in a single trip you'll discover the depravity of sin. My wife and I was preaching down near New Orleans, Louisiana several years ago, and my wife went with me to the meeting, and we so enjoyed fellowship one with the other, and I enjoyed preaching night by night, and we were so close to New Orleans, my wife said, let's go down there. And so we did one day, took a day trip, and we went down into the French Quarter, and I walked around with my wife down in the French Quarter, and I told my wife, I said, I feel like Lot, who vexed his righteous soul when we went down into the French Quarter of the city of New Orleans. And my wife and I simply walked down the sidewalk down one side and up the sidewalk on the other, and I felt like I needed 4 showers after we had finished doing that. How do you deny the matter of sin? You can go into any crowded area, any crowded city or town. It ought to be sufficient enough to reveal all the hideous forms that the matter of sin assumes. And no man could go through a place like that and come out on the other side and say, but there is no sin, I saw no sin, I observed no sin, there is no such thing as sin. Why, you would have to deny reality. You go into New York City now, and it's dangerous for you to even get on the subway. The robberies and people being murdered and all the mayhem that goes on. The fact of sin, there's a fact of revelation. The Bible declares, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But then there is a fact of observation. You and I can simply look about, and we can observe the matter of sin. And the difference between you and me as Bible believers and other members of our society is what they see as a social problem or a social weakness or a need for another social program. You and I that are Bible believers see as a fact of sin. I'm observing sin. I am looking at what sin does. I am seeing the ravages and the wages of sin as they unfold right before my very eyes. Now my time has gotten away from me on the broadcast today, but the Lord willing, we'll be back again on the broadcast tomorrow. May God bless you until then.
School.